We acknowledge that Tri-Cities Community Television operates on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. We thank the Coquitlam who continue to live on these lands and care for them along with the waters and all that is above and below.
Hello, I'm Genevieve Carlefebvre with Tri-Cities Community Television. We would like to thank the Coquitlam Library for donating the studio space today. Welcome to the Federal Election Candidate Series with Tri-Cities Community Television. Today, we are interviewing Mr. Lewis Dahlby with the Libertarian Party of Canada in the Coquitlam Port Coquitlam riding. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you today. Yeah. So let's go for it, okay? So why should people vote for you?
Well, the Libertarian Party is a political party that promotes liberty. It's from the root word liberty. And so when you vote Libertarian, we're trying to reverse the trend to big government, big intrusive government, and trying to maximize individual freedom. And I should point out, Argentina, they just elected, it's the largest country in the world that elected a libertarian president. And they had a lot of fiscal problems. They before the Libertarian came in, and he's really took he's kind of eliminated, I think, about 10 different departments and stuff like that, because the inflation rate was around 200% when he came into office, and he's got it down to about 15 or 20%, I think it is right now. And so drastic measures have to happen, and Canada is on the track to ever increasing size of government, and our total national debt, I think it's 1.3 trillion. If you add the provincial debt, it's up to 2.2 trillion, and it's growing every second. And so something has to be done, otherwise drastic measures will be taken down the road. So if you vote Libertarian, it's a signal that you're trying to reverse this trend to bigger and bigger government. The federal government increased the size of their the people that work for the government by 40% during the Trudeau term, and you got to realize that governments have no money of their own. The only money they have is the money they get from people, so they can't give you anything unless first they take it away from you. And in the process, you end up with less because the bureaucrats are inefficient, and they also take a big chunk for themselves, and they have, you know, big salaries and cushy pensions, and so it's an inefficient system. And as it also takes away your choice, your personal choice to spend your money the way you would choose to spend it, and because and the federal overall tax is around 46% for the average person. So and we're getting to the point where if you increase taxes, you end up with less funding. There's something called the Laffer curve, where if you set the overall taxation rate at 0%, you end up with zero taxes. If you set the overall taxation rate as 100%, you still end up with zero, because nobody's going to work for nothing. Basically, all their money would be taken. So in between, there's what's called the Laffer curve, where there's a maximum point, and it's around 45 to 50%. And once you go beyond that, you end up with less tax revenue. So, and taxes are unpopular, so governments, instead of taxing the people, they end up printing money, which causes inflation. Our inflation was up to 8% during 2022. During the COVID years, it was the deficit was $360 billion, which was huge. It was totally unnecessary. And the other way they can get money is they can issue bonds and treasury bills. So that's basically borrowing money. When you borrow money, you have to pay interest. You have to pay the money back. And so last year the interest payments were $46 billion, which is money that can't go for any other programs. And so that's kind of it's a crazy system. And anyway, so
Yeah.
I think that covers that.
Okay. What does civic leadership mean to you, and how does that plays out in your role as an MP representing the Tri-Cities area?
Yeah, well, I've run before for the Libertarian Party, so I don't really expect I'm going to get elected based on what happens. It's sort of a two-horse race this time, and so I'm really running to kind of just to inform the population about what's going on the best I can, and to promote liberty. And because I think you'll find around the world, the freest countries also are the most prosperous countries. The Fraser Institute, they do research on the freest countries in the world. There's one ranking the economic freedom. There's two kinds of freedom, basically, the economic freedom and personal freedom. Economic freedom is the most important for prosperity, and Canada is usually ranked in the top 20, so we're not doing too bad. But if you look at the bottom countries like Iran and most of Africa, they're suffering in poverty, and the main reasons are government corruption and very poor economic policies, restrictions and taxes and all kinds of problems like that. So it reduces the overall prosperity of the country. So I'm trying to promote that so we have greater prosperity and everyone will be happy. And recognizing that there's people that in the world that aren't they're not as capable as other people, so sometimes they need a little bit of help, but we can streamline the system. We don't need to have such a huge bureaucracy that we need more money that goes to the people that really need it. And so
Excellent.
as an MP, I don't think I'm likely to get become an MP. I mean, it's theoretically possible, I guess, but I don't think it's it's too likely. There's only going to be one winner. I think is there 5 candidates in this riding now?
Yeah. So how would you collaborate with municipal and provincial leaders and the Tri-Cities to meet community needs effectively?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned before, it's you're focusing on sort of civic issues, but I think a libertarian administration actually could do more than any of the other political parties, because of the fact that we believe in a very small, minimal federal government, and that would leave more money in the hands of the provinces and local governments. So what's happening right now is every Canadian is paying their taxes, and we send huge amounts of money to Ottawa. Then Ottawa decides how they're going to meter out that money. So then the provinces and the cities have to beg for money to come back for their pet projects. And but it's a losing game for the western provinces, because most of the money through transfer payments, it goes to Quebec and the Maritimes, and even Ontario gets some. And for example, Alberta, they're the biggest losers. They've sent more than $600 billion to Ottawa, like a net loss of $600 billion. So the money they send to Ottawa, they have a lot more money to spend, and BC is in the same boat, although we don't send as much to Ottawa as Alberta does, and so we're sort of net losers in effect. So and the population base is in the eastern provinces, and so we have difficulty to compete with if we want to have different city projects and whatnot. We're going to be the losers in that respect. Mm-hmm. So it's better to keep the money here instead of sending it to Ottawa in the first place. And that's what the Libertarians would advocate. I don't think any other political parties are advocating that.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about a bit of civic. I know what you mean. Yeah. We have to talk about civic issue here. We're going to be talking about affordable housing. So affordable housing continues to be a major concern. I think we all know this. Yeah. What steps will you take in the federal level to support housing solution in our region?
Yeah, well, there again, I think it's not a federal issue. It's it should be for cities, and the cities should loosen up the restrictions, and the local taxes make up a huge portion of the cost of housing. And but it's strangely enough, like Canada is the second largest country in the world, so we have lots of land. So I mean, in BC it's a little bit different. We have so many mountains, so that it's a little bit deceptive. But I don't know if people are aware, only 5% of land in BC is privately owned, so 95% is crown land, and so that's one reason why there's maybe an increase in housing costs, is because land is so expensive. And I did also have an idea that like for the homeless people, that's getting to be a huge issue, and every year it seems to get worse. And the cities, they don't seem to want to address that issue. They do have a few little attempts. You know, they have just close by here on Westwood Street, there's a place on Gordon Avenue that houses, but now there's an overflow, there's tents and whatnot out there. But so my idea was well, one of the things is we would sell the CBC, and that would save $1.3 billion every single year. And that money could be used to maybe mandate every town over 10,000 people could have to have a percentage of homes that would be like really small, and you can actually have like a shipping container. I actually, on my property, I have acreage in Coquitlam. I have a 20-foot shipping container with a bathroom. It has a bathtub and a shower, a washing machine, a dryer, and you know, a toilet and a sink and a hot water tank, and it has a little bedroom. And so I paid $48,000 for that. It was brand new. It's quite nice. Air conditioning, electric heat. And so we need something like that for the homeless people, where you can have a 40-foot shipping container, which would be probably more cost efficient, a little bit bigger. And you could designate areas to, like maybe on farmland and stuff like that, where you could have 10 of those. And then the homeless people could rely on something like that. And instead of wasting money on the CBC, $1.3 billion. That's just one example. There's huge fraud and waste in the federal government, and there's corruption, and the Trudeau government is among the worst for the fraud. He broke the ethical rules at least twice. There was all kinds of scandals, and I would urge people to go to the dismaldecade.ca. That one of the former leaders of the BC Libertarian Party kind of compiled a track record for the Trudeau Liberal government and all the scandals and all the different ethical corruption things, and so go to dismaldecade.ca. You could check that out. But yeah, so the homeless issues, or the high price of housing it's kind of a local issue. The government, the federal government should sort of get out of the way. We, as libertarians, we would envision a small federal government. It would just be restricted mostly to the military to protect the country from other countries, a national police force, and immigration issues, the money supply, and a few other things like that, but would be vastly reduced, and then give more power to the provinces. And the provinces should be competing against each other, which would that would force the provinces to be more fiscally responsible and to really do what the people want. And like right now, Alberta gets penalized for having the lowest tax rate in the country. They get penalized by sending money to Ottawa, and then Ottawa sends the money to Quebec, which gets the lion's share of the transfer payments. And then in return, Quebec, they deny pipelines. We should have the Energy East pipeline so we can sell our oil and gas to the world on the Atlantic coast, but instead we're importing oil from all over the world, from horrible dictatorships like Venezuela and Russia and the Saudi Arabia, different countries like that, and so there's ships are coming in the ports in Nova Scotia, and we should be selling our oil. It's crazy. We got more oil and gas than just about any other country, and we're importing oil from these other countries. We should also have the Northern Gateway pipeline should have been built. Trudeau had 10 years to do that, and they didn't do that. So we're kind of stuck selling our oil to the United States as pretty much our only customer, and we're selling at a 30% discount as a result. And we don't have the oil refineries, so we ship our oil to the U.S. and BC, the refineries in Washington State, and then they send the gas back. So most of our gas comes from Washington State, which is kind of crazy.
Okay.
So, how many?
Great. I'm going for the next question.
What question are we at now?
We are on number 5. We're good. We're doing really good.
Oh.
Okay, don't worry. I'll guide you.
Oh.
What are your thoughts on pressure that is being put on cities to increase densification, primarily around SkyTrains?
Well, I guess if you're going to have SkyTrain, which is very expensive, but I mean, it's a lot of people like it. And I actually never use it myself, very rarely, but it's because it's kind of restricted. It goes from point A to point B, and then you have to do a lot of walking, and then you're parking. Like it's, but for many people, so densification around the SkyTrain stations, it does make sense. Of course, I mean, if you're going to have a station, you build the towers and the condominiums, and that's what's happening. So I do support that. It does make sense. I mean, instead of having towers further away from the stations, of course, that makes sense. And so I do agree that it's. It does also, I suppose, for the lucky few that are aware of where the stations are going to be, they can make a lot of money financially if they buy up the land around the stations and before they actually are built. And but that's kind of the system. There's winners and losers when governments start doing stuff like that. And
yes.
In some ways, there's no way of getting around that, I guess. But.
Okay,
yeah.
So transit and infrastructures are critical in growing cities. What project or initiative are on the way to improve mobility in the Tri-Cities?
To improve mobility? Well, in my opinion, the road system is totally inadequate, and the bridges and stuff. And so in the Tri-Cities, it was good that the BC Liberals, they built the Broadway Coast Meridian overpass. They built a new Pitt River Bridge. They built the Golden Ears Bridge, and they did the 10-lane Port Mann Bridge. So they did a lot of improvements. The NDP is really poor. This is like provincially I'm talking, but the federal government really should be involved in maybe just Highway 1 and. Maybe I think that the prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and even Ontario, they should have access to the ports in British Columbia through a railroad network and a highway network like Highway 1. And so the federal government should make sure that there's no restrictions that the provincial government places on roads or railroads, the environmental things and building of ports and stuff like that. So right now, and even pipelines too. So for example, Alberta, if they want to sell their oil into the Asian countries, they can't get a pipeline to Prince Rupert area, which is kind of crazy. And they built the pipeline, that's Trans Mountain Pipeline that goes down to Burnaby, but it took so much longer and it was so much more expensive. And the private company that was doing it, they get so frustrated because it takes so long and there's so many regulations that they gave up. So the federal government had to step in and buy it, which was a good thing to do, but it shouldn't be necessary that happens. And anyway, so you were talking about mobility. So. Mm-hmm. It's a provincial issue basically, except for Highway 1 is what I would say. And the province would have more money if they sent less money to Ottawa. So they would have more money to build roads. And And the city's, Port Coquitlam, I guess, is managed fairly well. Brad West is saying that he's got the lowest taxes in the Lower Mainland, which is pretty good. So I think it's not too bad, the road network in Port Coquitlam. So yeah, go to the next one, I guess.
Okay. What is your perspective on the impact of the past and potential future U.S. tariffs, such as those imposed with Donald Trump administration on local industries and workers here in the Tri-Cities area?
Yeah, well, libertarians basically are free traders, so ideally it would be nice to have zero tariffs everywhere in the whole world. It would generate more prosperity. However, there's a problem. There's about 70 dictatorships in the world, and there's some really bad actors, like some really evil dictatorship like China, North Korea, Iran, Russia, and those are among the worst. So in my opinion, for the security of the nation, that trumps the desire to have free trade with every country. So I wouldn't have free trade with China. So I kind of support these tariffs that he's trying to level the playing field, which everyone's kind of portraying as, Trump is putting on tariffs. But what he's really doing, he's trying to point out the fact that other countries have all these tariffs on America, and it's totally unfair, especially China. And most people aren't aware that China has huge tariffs on American goods going into China. And so now if America wants to kind of retaliate and put reciprocal tariffs on, he's the bad guy, which it's not really the case. And Canada has tariffs on U.S. goods coming into Canada. So we're not, we're bellying about tariffs, but we put tariffs on U.S. and other countries as well. And so tariffs they're being used as a tool by Trump. It's not just tariffs. There's also other restrictions besides that. There's money manipulation that China uses, and there's just outright bans and stuff like that, where they might have low tariffs or zero tariffs, but then they'll restrict products in other ways. So other countries do that. So it's a negotiating tactic that Trump is using. And like, for example, Canada, with our NATO commitment, we're supposed to spend 2% of our GDP on military, and we're at 1.36%. And Trudeau, during the first term of Trump, said, "Oh yeah, we'll raise it up to 2%," but they never did. So we can't be trusted from that point of view. And a lot of Europe is spending less than 2% of GDP. Some are higher, like Finland and Norway. They're around 4%. The U.S. is at 4% of GDP. So it's kind of not fair. Like Canada and European countries, we're freeloaders. We want to be protected from the evil Russians, but yet we don't want to pay for the military. We're just relying on the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have about a couple minutes per question now. Don't worry, I'm timing you. We're doing good. Okay, so how will you engage directly with residents in Coquitlam and Port Coquitlam to ensure their voices are heard in Ottawa?
Well, just by running as a candidate. That's my contribution, and I've run provincially as well. Quite a few times I've run. And so that's, I can't, it's kind of like banging your head against the wall. I can only do so much, and it's, in a way, it's kind of futile. I'm just trying to educate people to a certain degree, but because I'm not going to get elected, I'm going to have pretty minimal impact. So let's go to the next question.
Okay, let's go. What federal resources or programs should Tri-Cities residents be more aware of?
Resources?
Yeah. Resources and programs.
Yeah, well, libertarians would reduce all these federal programs. Most of them we would probably eliminate. And so, I'm not, like the other candidates are going to try and offer all kinds of different new programs like dental plans and $10 daycare. The NDP is crowing about all these different programs, but they all cost tons of money, and we're already borrowing. I think the deficit it's at $50 trillion or $50 billion per year, And we've been running deficits for the last 10 years of the Liberal government. So that we can't just keep adding new programs and increasing taxes and borrowing money and printing money. We can't.
Okay.
Okay, one more. Is that the one more?
Couple more, we're good.
Oh.
You're doing great. Okay. Youth and civic engagement are crucial for a healthy democracy. Will you encourage young people in the Tri-Cities to get involved?
Yes, I would encourage them to get involved. I would encourage them to educate themselves on economic policy and personal freedom and economic freedom, and everybody would encourage everybody to educate themselves on how important it is for prosperity and just for the life that you want to live, to be happy. You need individual freedom for that to occur.
Mm-hmm. Looking ahead, what is your vision for the future of the Tri-Cities, and how would you work as an MP contribute to that?
Well, I would just still focus on trying to educate people. I'm 71 years old, so this may be my last time I run. So, but I would encourage people to just kind of get involved and educate themselves. And if we have any more time, I would maybe just like to point out too that there's two issues I'm quite passionate about. One is about democracy, and the other one is about the climate change crises. And the climate change crises, I think, it's really been overblown. It's been exaggerated. And if you look at the science, if we had more time, I can prove to you that it's really a big scam, and it's not an issue at all. And I can explain that. I usually use a tape measure to explain. I ask just a few questions, and if you like, I can tell you right now. The few key points are: the peak of the last ice age was 20,000 years ago. All of Canada was covered in snow and ice, about a mile thick, and so was Russia. And then the planet started to warm up. We don't know why it warmed up, but we do know it had nothing to do with humans, what humans did. And so all that snow and ice melted, it flowed into the ocean. And then I asked people, well, how much did the sea level rise from the peak 20,000 years ago until now? Most people have no idea, but the correct answer is 400 feet, which is huge. It's like a 40-story building. Then I asked them, well, how much is sea level rising right now? And the answer is 3.4 millimeters per year, which is kind of minuscule. That works out to about a foot in 100 years. But the average for the last 20,000 years is 2 feet, so twice as much on average for the last 20,000 years. So we're less than the average. And so that's, if you take 200 years times 100 segments, so 2 feet, 200 times is 20,000 years. So what's happening now is minuscule compared to what we've gone through, and we're thriving like never before. And in fact, a warming climate is actually more desirable. It's better for plants and animals. And carbon dioxide, which is the big boogeyman, which is supposed to create the global warming, is only 0.0, it used to be 0.03%, now it's 0.04%.
I have 30 seconds, so go ahead.
It's minuscule.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a big issue, but it's really driven by the World Economic Forum to control the population, but there's no scientific basis. Democracy, we don't have time to get into that, but the simple way to explain it is, the flaw with democracy is like 3 wolves and a sheep taking a vote on what they're going to have for dinner. If I had more time, I could explain on that. And it all boils down to voluntary consent. And there's 2 ways to conduct human interaction. This is the most important thing to remember. 2 ways to conduct human interaction: the peaceful, civilized way of voluntary consent that libertarians advocate, and then there's the barbaric way of violence and coercion that everybody else sort of advocates for. Even if they don't realize it, that's what they're advocating. Because if you don't believe in voluntary consent, the other option is violence and coercion.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talking with us. Yeah. And I know it's a busy time right now. Good luck with everything.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate. And if it's over
You're doing great. All good.
Or
It's
you
all
can
good.
chop out some of the middle part, maybe.
You did great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much from Tri-Cities Community Television and myself, Geneviève Lefebvre. And don't forget to go vote on April 28th because every vote matters. Thank you.